Yo, Molo Sanbonani, hello, how's it? Shalom, good evening, goeienaand, goeie mense, welkom na nog 'n episode van Liberty and Friends. My name is Sihle Ngobese of Big Daddy Liberty. Welcome to it. It is a cracking Sunday evening. You know what it is. You know what it is. When it's Sunday evening, it is Liberty and Friends. But tonight is going to be a little different. You'll have to excuse me, folks, if I'm a little on edge and a bit fidgety. I'm trialing a new way of doing this. Hence, you'll probably see me wearing these earphones. Usually, all of this is shot on my phone using the front facing camera, but for a wonderful, wonderful reason, an almost Frankensteinish reason, I decided to experiment and use the back-facing camera because it is slightly better quality. And yeah, let's see if it works. Let me just do a quick sound check to make sure you folks can hear me. Just drop your location maybe in the comment section, just so that I can see that people can actually hear that the show is on. If you see me looking down here, this is my little control panel that I use to control the show with. I might actually just bring that onto my lap. But with that being said, as usual, folks, as you're streaming in, hit that like button, please. Just smash that like button. Do me a favor. It really does help get this show out to a broader audience. So welcome to it. This is perfect. I'm seeing you, Marcia Bortolucci. Bortolucci. Is that Italian? Out in Belito. Thank you very much. I see you with that confirmation. With that being said, welcome to it. This is Liberty and Friends, a slightly different episode of Liberty and Friends tonight. I don't have the usual friends, so to speak, by way of a panel, as you've come to be quite accustomed to on the show. Tonight, we're going to do things slightly different. You, dear viewer, you're going to be the friends tonight. So gird your loins. I'm going to share the link just now that will get you on to the show because I want to hear from you. It's been a relatively interesting news week this week, and I want to hear from you as to what you think is going on. There is a lot of dribbling and distracting that is currently underway as it is political silly season. You guys know that tomorrow is the voting day for the local government elections 2021 in South Africa. And all the politicians have been out on the streets grifting and begging you for your vote and promising all sorts of things. So let's get into that conversation. What are your thoughts so far about the offering made by politicians? Perhaps you're one of the South Africans who might not be voting tomorrow. You're joining the growing legion of 18 million plus South Africans who are eligible to vote but have opted not to vote. Tell me maybe why you've opted to make that decision. Or maybe, hey, maybe you are voting and you're voting in, and you will be voting in, pardon me, a smaller, in inverted commas, political party. Maybe you're moving away from the big three, right? So the EFF, ANC, and the DA. Maybe talk to me about that rationale. I want to get that conversation going. Get some coffee, get some hot chocolate, get a warm dop, as one say in Afrikaans. Marmuni sipes us a fusney as you're watching, but because I want us to have that conversation in a rather sober way. So welcome to it. We're going to have that conversation tonight. Another thing I want to look at tonight is the story, the saga, really. But the saga that is embracing the independent media group. That's the IOL. If you search online, for example, of the Decuplets, the 10 twins, Decuplets that were supposedly born in this country, but no one has seen any photos of. The chairperson of the independent media group appeared before your television screens this week in order to dig this hole deeper for the independent group. Now claiming in a Decuplets report, claiming a conspiracy involving the government and Nigerian effectively suggesting Nigerian scamsters and a human trafficking syndicate. So we'll get into that tonight too, because that's becoming quite a bit of a weird, a really weird thing to double down on by the independent group. And of course, hey man, we've been talking about government failure, and for the past 2 weeks perhaps on this platform, we've been talking about the sheer collapse of law enforcement in this country. But lo and behold, if you are a follower of Big Daddy Liberty on Twitter, you'll remember that I had a Spaces conversation, one of these new features that Twitter has that allows me to do voice shows in a sense on Twitter. And one of the things I discussed was the consequences of government failure, of those things that are a government responsibility. When there is a failure by the state or by government of those things, then someone will always fill the void. I've always said this, where there is a power void, a power gap, someone will always fill it. And when it comes to law enforcement, the failure of the South African police services has seen, as it has for a very long time now, has seen the rise of vigilantism in communities across the country, specifically poor communities. But one such vigilante, who's been dubbed John Wick by residents of Mamelodi, just outside Pretoria, is quite literally, as his namesake in the movie does, cleaning up, seemingly, the hardened criminal gangs, extortion gangs that are operating in Mamelodi. These gangs, of course, are the, let me just see if I remember their names properly here, the Bafarasai gang, which I'm assuming they're modeling their name along the lines of Pharisees, which would be very telling. And the other gang, of course, Boko Haram, of Boko Haram fame, the terrorist organization operating out of Nigeria. The John Wick character, as we've come to learn, his what's that expression in English? A fabled name, but urban legend. The urban legend goes, is this lone individual who's quite literally, with his gun and aggression, cleaning up the streets of Mamelodi. So let's have that conversation tonight. Maybe you live in a part of the world, maybe you're watching this and you're from Mamelodi. Or maybe you're watching this and you're from a part of the country where vigilante behavior is not common, but it's something you might see because of the failure of the South African police services. Let's have that conversation tonight too. Guys, welcome to it. This is Liberty and Friends. Just have a look at the comments section, please. I'm going to share the show's link to become an audience, or pardon me, to become a to hop on and actually chat to me on the show. So keep an eye for that. Let me just fix myself up here. Blah, 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 blah. Hang on, folks, hang on. So ready yourselves, people. Let's get those comments in. As always on the show, got my water there. Keeping hydrated. There we go. This is slightly, somewhat comfortable, kind of ish. No, it isn't. I lied. Here we go. That's better. All right, folks, get your comments in. And of course, keep an eye on the comment section. I'm going to post that link just now. There it is. Hey, everybody. If you want to hop on to the show as a guest, here is the link. Sounded like a Bond villain there. Here is the link, Mr. Bond. Click it. Watch what happens to you. A Nigerian 619 scammer will come after you. Imagine that. Imagine James Bond being foiled by a Nigerian 619 scammer. Welcome to the dungeon, Mr. Bondo. I'm sorry, I digress. Here we go, folks. The link is in the descriptor of the video. Pardon me, not the descriptor of the video, but it's in the comment section. So have a look at the comment section, folks. There it is. I'm going to put it up on screen too. That link, of course, allows you to hop on to this particular stream. You'll enter my little virtual studio over here. I have 2 rules, as I always say, 2 rules when it comes to hopping onto the BDL show, whatever format or whatever show. You've got to have a light in front of you. Number 1, you've got to have a light in front of you, which means, of course, that you've got to be on camera. You've got to cam up. We've got to clearly see your face. And, of course, keep the language clean, please, dear people. No F-bombs and S this and just try your level best to keep the language clean. And guys, keep on topic. Keep on topic. And the topic is, of course, what are the news headlines that got you talking tonight? What are the news headlines that got you angry, happy? And given some of the things we're going to be talking about tonight, maybe what are your thoughts around this? And I'm really interested to find out, guys. I really mean this when I say this. I'm really interested to find out what the sort of voting patterns will look like. Of course, we're not going to establish patterns here on this show, but it'll give me a good sense of intentions, voting intentions of some of the people who watch the show. So remember, folks, got to have the camera in front of you, got to be on camera, and have a light, please, in front of you so we can see you, and keep the language clean, please. Super appreciate that. As we wait for people to hop on to the show, welcome to it. We are at that 20-minute mark tonight. The show probably won't be as long as usual because it is an open show and you never know as to whether people hop on or not. But I do want to begin just with let's chat about this Decuplets story. That is the 10 twins who supposedly were born in this country but just somehow disappeared. And there's no photos of them. There's no... you'd expect that a woman who was pregnant with Decuplets would at least have an ultrasound. That sounds to me like something which a doctor or a gynecologist, that is, or a nurse who's monitoring the process of the pregnancy would give to a mother, right? An expectant mother of Decuplets, at least an ultrasound of 10 babies in a womb, but seemingly none of that. None of that. And a journalist in this country, Upit Rampedi of the independent group, I think now is the editor of the Pretoria News, if I'm not mistaken. And bear in mind, the independent media group used to be such a reliable and stalwart, if you will, of the South African news climate. I mean, I'm talking about titles such as the Pretoria, is it Pretoria Times or Pretoria News, if I'm not mistaken, Cape Times, if you're in the Cape. If you're a Durbanite, shout out to my fellow Durbanites, titles such as the Daily News, the Sunday Tribune, all of these used to be, titles that were under the independent stable. Isolezwe newspaper used to be very reliable newspaper, and it's literally gone to the dogs simply because the individuals who've taken over this newspaper do not value media integrity at all or journalistic integrity at all. And that tells you everything you need to know when you then see a story like the Decuplets one, where it is so sloppy and it's deceitful, to be brutally honest. It's deceitful. And that's the level of disrespect that some in the corporate media, remember I said I'm no longer calling them the mainstream media because ever increasingly alternative platforms like mine are becoming more mainstream. More and more South Africans are looking to people like me, Roman Cabernet et al. For their news analysis and opinion. So I've switched now from calling them the mainstream to calling them the corporate media. There are people in the corporate media who are happy enough to actually lie to you, to be deceitful, because that surely is the only explanation I can come up with when it comes to this Decuplets story. Let me just get this off screen for a moment, folks. I can think of no other reason. And, there might be some people who are saying, oh, but hang on, what if the journalist himself was lied to? What if Rampedi was lied to by this woman who claimed she had 10 babies and was about to give birth to 10 babies? That's one plausible reason. But a journalist's job is about verifying the facts, checking a story corroborating it with multiple sources, basics that journalists used to be able to do in order to give us then a finished product which errs on the side of the truth, which errs on the side of facts. And by all accounts, from what we can see from here, this journalist has failed. And again, much like Ivo Vegter said, if you remember, we had this conversation on a previous episode of Liberty and Friends. I don't know when, but I had Ivo Vegter on it, if you remember back. And Ivo himself was rightly pointed out, it's debatable, it is a dubious prospect at best to name someone like Upit Rampedi a journalist. Dubious prospect at best. And again, don't take it from Ivo Vegter. Look at the record of history, a newspaper group that has become the news themselves. Ever increasingly, the independent group is the news. They are the news, as opposed to them bringing you the news. And it's laughable, if I'm to be brutally honest. But let me come back to the point. Insofar as the chairperson of the independent media group, one nefarious, or rather one infamous character, let me put it that way, one Dr. Iqbal Survey, appears before your screen, hosts a press conference this week, a 3-hour-long press conference, to basically waffle and wax lyrical, suggesting that, they've looked into this matter of the Decuplets saga. Now they have a report, he says. And in this report, and by the way, he was flanked by quote-unquote experts, a cardiologist and the like. If you want to find the story, please do yourself a favor and look it up if you missed it this week. And they engage in the most pitiful display of sophistry and mental gymnastics to try and justify how their newspaper group went with the story pretty much without the facts. And in doing so have doubled down and literally dug themselves into a deeper hole, now suggesting, and almost laughably so, you know something is dodgy where you're actually willing to take the side of this corrupt government because the story you're being told just doesn't seem plausible. And the story we're being told, Garth, I do see you in the waiting room. I'll get to you now, homie. The story we're being sold by the independent group is, well, the babies are there, he tells us. The babies are there. We saw them. We can verify them. What this might be a case of is, or not might, what this is a case of is the story of a dodgy Nigerian doctor or Nigerian syndicate or Nigerian doctor, and effectively a colluding of the Department of Health, various government entities, the medical staff from various facilities in this country in order to kidnap and steal these 10 babies, and then colluding after that to basically suggest that this mother is, in order to cover their tracks, that the mother is mentally unwell. Yo, can we imagine anything more clown worldish than that? First of all, to suggest that this government is able to coordinate anything of that nature, of that sophisticated nature, is laughable. That in and of itself just tells you this, Amangala, these are lies. Suggesting that this government, same government that cannot keep the lights on for 14 years, somehow is able to then collude and orchestrate this wonderful conspiracy where the whole world was told about these 10 decuplets, was able to then, almost like Ocean's 11, or should I call it Decuplets 10, orchestrate a sophisticated child trafficking ring and then cover its tracks, is laughable. It's genuinely laughable. Genuinely laughable. And yet, that's what the independent media group expected you to believe this week. That's genuinely the story they sold you this week. So that I'd be very interested in finding out what you guys think about this. Because for me, the real takeaway here is a media group that has no shame in lying to you and even assuming that you're dumb enough to believe a clown worldish explanation like that. That is the level of disdain. That is the level of disrespect the corporate media has for you in this country. And by the way, it's not just the independent group. I can list some of the things that News 24 and these other groups have done also. Because I put up a tweet this week basically saying, it's funny to me how when the mainstream media, or pardon me, when the corporate media, when they want to lie to you, suddenly the fact checkers, the so-called fact checkers on social media or anywhere else disappear. They're nowhere to be seen. Somehow there's no fact checking for them. And yes, you might argue, but there is a media ombudsman, right? A media ombudsman who's meant to hold them in line and blah, blah, blah. But in reality, I mean, if the independent group themselves can opt out of that accountability, that little accountability that there is, by not being a part of the media ombudsman, that tells you everything you need to know. You are being dribbled and distracted by these people. Or maybe that's just my house. Gonda Brinkat says News 24 and ENCA are appalling. I can't blame you when you say this. And I think this is why you're seeing the growth, and even explosive growth in some cases, of what used to be called alternative media spaces, this being one platform. I mean, there are 75,000 of you who are subscribers or quotes, pardon me, who liked, pardon me, the page on Facebook. 75,000 South Africans who like the page of a relative nobody. Because I keep telling you people, I'm not a messiah, I'm not some sage, I'm not some important dude. I'm an ordinary South African, who's just had enough. I'm fed up with the state of things here. And beyond me just ranting and raving, so to speak, on these platforms, Facebook, Twitter, or YouTube, I've decided I've given up my own middle-class existence to literally travel this country and to engage fellow South Africans, those in some of the poorest neighborhoods too, the forgotten South Africans. Diamonds of a blay in the plattelandse van hierdie land. Those forgotten South Africans, engage them on the liberty ideas that I've argued on this show, for example, will create that free, prosperous, non-racial and property-earning society. So don't think that this is just it. This is all I do. I just sit on here and, I talk, blah, 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 blah. No, the real work is out there. It's the part, unfortunately, you don't see here. And I've argued before that I necessarily won't show on here because some people, it is a risk for some people to even be seen with me, or that's another story for another day. I'll cross that bridge on the show maybe one day. But the point I'm making is, it's guys like us who we're growing, we're seeing growth. 30,000 plus, 33,000 if I'm not mistaken, plus individuals on YouTube, growing Twitter audience, and soon to be on Rumble and other platforms, because I can also see that there is a little bit of shadow banning that is happening on my page now, especially on Facebook, where they throttle my content. It doesn't go out as far as it used to. Because there is a fundamental opposition. This is the point I wanted to really get to. There is a fundamental opposition to freedom of speech and free thought. And those who used to traditionally be the gatekeepers of narratives in society, i.e. the corporate media, show their disdain for you and almost exemplify why we've moved away from them in small little incidents like these, where they openly lie to you and even double down on the lie with no shame. But maybe I'm just talking crap. Maybe I'm just talking nonsense. Nah. Garth, I'm going to bring you on, homie. There he is, Garth, on screen. Homie,
hey, how's it going?
Welcome to Liberty.
Oh, as well. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you clearly, my brother. What's on your mind?
Okay. Yeah, I was just listening to this thing about the, shall we say, the 10 fake babes, which is it's sort of like encompasses the state of our media right now. Well, actually, for the past, I would say, the past good 4 or 5 years, where the journalists really, it's just like they don't care anymore. And as far as I'm concerned, it's criminal what's happened to media. And now that we have this issue with the whole corporate media thing, where corporate media is now so tied into the politics and the government that they are pretty much being yoked as to feed one narrative as the, shall we say, the government would want. I don't want to say government, but that's the word I'm going to use. It's the only word that I know. And thereby they just, shall we say, form a narrative or twist a narrative into a way that they would want it to be. And now something like this thing with these 10 babies kick in, and it starts showing the chink in the armor, if you will. And now you got this whole lot of backpedaling going, yes, but now we're investigating. It's too late. You can't backpedal on a bugger up that big. And hopefully it just opens people's minds to where we are right now with where media and social media, and especially when it's all government sanctioned or government or corporate media, as we put it, is. I find the only place to really get good, solid information lately is in the independent forums, because like yourself and many other people, when you're not afraid to speak out and tell the truth, let's be honest, those who lie are going to hate you. They literally going to try and bring you down any way they can, discredit you and burn crosses at your door and heaven knows what, just because you're telling the truth. And it's almost as though truth is becoming like shall we say, people who tell the truth are sort of like being hated upon just because they tell the truth. And any journalist, I mean, I have journalist friends who look at me and go, oh, you're just a conspiracy theorist. But what's quite interesting is when the conspiracies as time goes on, these conspiracies start being proven as true. Let's go back to the COVID virus wasn't from a lab. Now it's been shown that it's more likely from the lab and all this sort of thing. Now everybody's going, yes, but. And like, but what?
And you know, the funny thing is, and you're right, by the way, in raising the specter, as I've been also putting comments up on the screen as you've been talking, that it isn't just a South African phenomenon. It isn't just a South African phenomenon. I've been saying for a very long time that the corporate media is a entity, a force for actually dribbling and distracting people. It's definitely not an entity anymore for entertaining, or pardon me, for informing, and yes, entertaining at times, but primarily informing a citizenry who are then able to make decisions based off of sound information, data, and facts. You don't see that. And what makes it even worse is that you see that, or the lack of that information, sound information and facts, reflect itself in the caliber of political discourse, social discourse. For instance,
yes.
you rightly raised the specter, for example, of the spicy cough. I'm not going to say its name on here because these platforms will, ban us and shadow ban us. The spicy cough has been a wonderful grift for a lot of these individuals, because it's given, for example, politicians powers that they've never had before, unimaginable amounts of power, authoritarian levels of power, and equally, it's given more nefarious groupings in the private sector, including the corporate media, access to resources they've never had before, including money. So I call it I'll say the name once, the COVID grift, just for the sake of getting that out, because it's accorded power and resources. But let me pose a question to you, as I'm genuinely interested. You mentioned that you're moving towards alternative sources for your news analysis and opinion. What are some of the stuff that you're consuming? I just want to, just for the sake of interest.
Okay, so there's a lot of stuff that let's go like right off the bat first. I listen to a lot of Russell Brand, believe it or not, right now, because he has a very, very unique perspective on things. He neither takes neither side, but he gives you the facts, right? And his team kind of dig down deep and find out a lot of stuff. It's actually from him that I've found that one of the shall we say, medical treatments for C19 can actually trace its origins back to fetal cells and that sort of thing. So, but he doesn't. As he does it, he goes through the reports that have been dug up and found, and so on and so forth. So there's a lot of information that you can find there. Just shall we say, even killed stuff, right? And then obviously IRR. I listen. I watch. I read a bit of the IRR. A lot of the South African stuff. A lot of the stuff that you cover as well. I listen to. I take my time, and then I actually go into like databases. The CDC. I read CDC reports. I read whenever I find like a report out there that I go and find the source, and I read through the source first, and then make up my mind and that sort of thing. So I try to remain informed more than letting the mainstream corporate media inform me, if I can put it that way. Because I've come to realize that many people rely on Jacaranda for their source of news. Let's put it there. So falling into that whole mainstream sort of stuff. So I don't subscribe to conspiracy theory, right? I mean, you read some stuff. Oh, they're putting 5G in you and whatever. Yeah, whatever. You know, but the thing is, I try and find the source of the information that I would read through. I mean, reports and that sort of thing. What was the last stuff that I read? I mean, what's it? MRX. So there's a medical journal that I quite oftenly frequent. Let me just find that for you.
And maybe as you're doing that.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, absolutely. I was just about to say, maybe as you're doing that, you know, and as a concluding thought from my side at least, you know, one of the things I really encourage people to do exactly what you're doing. You know, by all means, right? You know, if you have a subscription to News 24 or IOL and that's what you want, free, guys, it's a free country. Well, used to be, but anyway. Point is, it's you have the freedom to do so. However, balance your wow, I just lost my guest there. Balance your Garth might be back, but I've just lost him. But if you did hop off, Garth, it was good to see you. Balance your news sources by some of these other sources. I mean, the Daily Friend, www.dailyfriend.co.za is a treasure trove of information, news, analysis, and opinion. And I really encourage people to draw on that. And this is what I actually wanted to get. And let me just get Garth back on screen. I just lost him there for a moment. Garth, welcome back. But the concluding thought I was making is this. One of the things I'm looking to do, and you'll remember a very long time ago, you know, when even lockdown began, I mentioned that it's one of the things, the strategic directions I want to take the show in, which is to have it syndicated on radio stations across the country. Because it's one thing for me to be on your social media, you know, Facebook, YouTube, and blah, blah, blah. But people still listen to radio. And that's the point Garth was making. Because there's far too many people, for example, who listen to Jacaranda. So one of the things I'm working on, and I'm saying there's good progress, is you'll probably start seeing me on your mainstream radio channels having a BDL show on there to push these ideas on there. There's a lot of background work that we're doing as we're looking to relaunch the Big Daddy Liberty Show into something very different, much bigger, in your face, and more pervasive in more communities, because someone has to do the work of spreading these libertarian, classically liberal, liberty ideas into a new sphere that doesn't have this outlook at all. Most of what we consume in the corporate media in this country really is center-left and even outright leftists, especially if you look at who the columnists are in your corporate media. But Garth, your final word?
Just something that Robert Kennedy Jr. said not so long ago, actually, and his words went something like this, paraphrasing, of course: governments love pandemics as much as they love war, because it gives them the opportunity to impose restrictions upon the population that they otherwise would never accept. And that is very much true right now. If you take a look at what's happening around the world and so on and so forth, with where this conversation started was with media, where media is being used in such a blatant manner to mold and mix, or should I say, mold and scare people to the point of submission. We would never have, well, people would never have accepted half of the stuff that is happening now if the governments weren't using media in that way to frighten the hell out of everybody, to the point where they don't know whether they want to turn left or right, and that is the problem that we're facing right now, is how to navigate what's real and what's not anymore, and especially our young people who have been brought up in, this is going to sound harsh, but much of our school system has had two generations of socialists teaching them right now. If you think about it, mainly leftists, so most of our teachers are left. And they have been taught that what the government says is what you do, finished and clear. That is, the media that they feed you is the media that you consume. And the challenge is how to open the mind of the young people and the children who have lost themselves in this noise. And talking to them is one thing. And the problem that we're sitting with right now, and sorry, I'm talking so much, but the problem that we're sitting right with.
This is my long format show. I welcome these conversations.
Thanks. What we're sitting with right now is a situation where you can show them an evidence with pictures, facts, and videos, and they will still say yes, but we've been told. And that is the mindset that we need to break and try and teach people that, listen, don't just get your information from one side. Look at both sides and make up your own mind. Don't be told what to think. Stop letting your mommy tell you that this movie is going to scare you. Watch it and decide.
I mean, I'll add one step further and stop being dribbled, as I often say. Don't be dribbled.
Yes.
Believing that the state or Ramaphosa is, you mentioned your mommy, or that somehow he's your daddy, for example. This notion of a family meeting, for example.
Say it like that.
These are things that we need to rightly point out. That, of course, is Garth. Garth, where are you calling me from?
I'm calling you from Pretoria North.
Awesome. That is Garth, of course, from Pretoria North, brother. Thank you very much for being on the stream. I mean, Garth makes an important point towards the end there. We need to reintroduce, and this is what this is the main purpose of the work that I do, to reintroduce a citizenry that has a healthy mistrust of government and politicians. I don't care who you vote for. I don't care where you stand for on the political spectrum. What you really need for a society to truly be a healthy, vibrant one is a citizenry that, generally speaking, has a healthy mistrust of government. Look at the Swiss, for example, as a very healthy example. I do have Unolu Maki on the waiting area. I see you, Nolu. You just need to cam up, please. Be on camera, pardon me. Nolu, let's see what sort of comments have come through over here. And if you're just joining us, wow, the time's actually flown quite a bit. You're watching Liberty and Friends. We're having an easy, chilled, laid-back Sunday chat with you, dear South African, the viewer of the show. If you want to be on the show, remember there's only 2 rules. You've got to be on camera and have a good light in front of you. And just keep the language clean, please. I'm going to put the link again in the comment section, the link that you can click in order to come on to the show. If you have a disagreement, hey, you're welcome. Come on also. This isn't, I've always said, this is not a yes man group, so to speak. I said man. I'm assuming people's gender. The gender grifters might come after me for saying that. Welcome to it. This is Liberty and Friends. The other topic I really sort of spotted, Nolu, I see you in the comment section. Pardon me, I see you in the waiting area. I'll come to you just now. The other issue that I really wanted to look at this week, I find it genuinely interesting, is, if you, as I said at the beginning of this broadcast, if you listen to me and you follow me on Twitter, you would have listened or joined in on a Twitter Spaces that I held, which is basically it's a podcast. Basically, it allows you to talk and have people listen in to the talk you're delivering, and of course contribute to the conversation. And as I was detailing the failures of the state, and I argued too that it's reprehensible when the state fails at something, because for two reasons. Number one, the state shouldn't really have many responsibilities. In an ideal Big Daddy Liberty society, the state would have three roles. One, to protect us from foreign aggression. The idea that you have an army, a diplomatic corps that maintains relations with other states, and of course, pursues the non-aggression principle generally. So first responsibility of the state is to protect us from foreign aggression. So if Zimbabwe decided to invade, we should have an army that can withstand that. That's also become a dubious prospect. But anyway, I digress. The second responsibility is to protect South Africans from domestic threats to our life, liberty, and property rights. When I say domestic threats, I'm talking about criminals, right? Criminals who literally threaten life, liberty, and property rights. What do I mean by this? Sorry, let me just do that. Sorry, Garth, I just had to move you out of there to make space. So we expect, for example, a functioning and efficient police service, a judiciary, of course, or rather a correctional services which handles criminals in society. And of course, the third responsibility is to administer justice. So a judiciary, court system, judges, and the like. These are the three responsibilities of the state, in my view, the only responsibilities of the state. So that I become incredibly angsty and pissed off when the state fails at those responsibilities, when it fails at the basics of what a government should be doing. And in that regard, I bring up a one asshat as a case in point. A one asshat, the Minister of Police, Ubheki Cele. Let me see if I have a file image of the asshat. I probably don't. I bring him up because here's a man who's at the helm of one core area of government responsibility, and he's doing an absolute shambolic job of it, to the point where you're probably watching this right now behind a Fort Knox of home security. You've probably put on the beams outside, your burglar bars, your trellis doors shut, you've locked doors, and your house probably resembles something of a bit of a prison, where every window has bars on it. That's the lived reality of South Africans. Why? Because of a failure of a key part of government responsibility, which is safety, security, law enforcement, and the administration of justice. What's the point? The point is this. I then look at a headline that sort of it first just went wild on social media, and then the corporate media caught up to it. There is a fella, I'll call him a masked crusader. Not because he necessarily wears a mask like a superhero, but because all of us are forced to wear these diapers on our face. So I'll call him a masked crusader, who is allegedly on the streets of Mamelodi Township outside Pretoria with his pistol or rifle, I don't know what he uses, cleaning up the streets of Mamelodi from two rival gangs which had run and are running extortionist criminal gang rings in Mamelodi. They're extorting businesses, extorting private residences, and they're violent gangs in that part of the world. Out of the ashes of Mamelodi and out of the failure of the asshat department, the police ministry, rises an individual, allegedly, who's quite literally cleaning up the streets by executing these gang bosses and these gang leaders, often in broad daylight in the Mamelodi. Now, please bear in mind, even as I say this, I don't say this to condone it. I don't say this because I'm saying, yay, John Wick. I have no view on that in that sense, except to say this is what is happening right now. This chap has divided the community to an extent. In the one sense, there are there are residents of Mamelodi who are saying, finally, someone who's actually dealing with these gang members who terrorize us and terrorize us with a wanton disregard for law enforcement, and also terrorize us in the context where law enforcement is failing us as residents of Mamelodi. So he's got a yay crowd. And then he has a boo crowd. A boo crowd is those who, to an extent, recognize what this guy's doing, but are upset at it because they still believe that the state should be the ones who are actually doing this job. So I then asked the question, and by the way, they named this chap John Wick. After, of course, a character played by Keanu Reeves of the same namesake, a movie series of a vigilante type character, who shoots his way through the criminal underworld. Where am I going with this, fellas? Guys, sorry, excuse me. Oh, guys and fellas are the same thing, Big Daddy. Are you assuming their gender again? Where am I going with this? How the corporate media is presenting this guy is that somehow he is, how dare he do this? He's an aberration. He should be leaving this to Begitele and the South African police services. The same police services which is already admitted via the police commissioner, that they're simply unable to execute their mandate of protecting South Africans. But anyway, that's another issue for another day. There's a vilification of this character that lacks context. There's two areas of context I want to add before I come to Unolu Maki. I see her waiting in the lobby. Number one, vigilantism in this country is not new. It's not new. And the culture around vigilante behavior is ironically one that was given to us by the ANC and the liberation movements in the late 70s through the 80s and 90s. The notion, for example, of disregarding the state's role in enforcing the law, forming a mob, and with that mob, much like what is a kangaroo court, administering justice on the street and dispensing punishment on the street too. Often, as you'll often see in most cases, via burning people alive using a burning tire around the neck, or beating people to death with rocks, stones, and the like. I've seen myself, having grown up in Elokshini, Emlazi, outside Durban, I've seen cases of this before. It's not new to us who live in townships. So that when I read about a character like John Wick, as a resident of Emlazi, because I live there at the moment, albeit I'm just traveling for now, when I see this, number one, I'm not surprised. And number two, I'm not really put off by this, because I know what the frustrations are of the residents of that area. And the fact that this man is using a firearm to do this, for me, doesn't faze me also. Because I've always argued that it's simply immoral to expect a society of South Africans, law-abiding society, of those law-abiding South Africans, to be the victims of criminals who themselves will never heed any instruction or any law that outlaws gun ownership. So it's always the law-abiding guy who will follow that law at the expense, of course, of their life, liberty, and property rights. Because the criminals, by very nature of them being a criminal, they won't care that the asshat passes a law that outlaws our ability to defend ourselves using firearms. Therefore, you're seeing in real terms that there's a collision of two things here. Number one, a collision of the failure of law enforcement in a community like Mamelodi. And number two, the collision of years of disempowering a citizenry in that part of the world who are unable to then, when things hit the fan, so to speak, and they're ruled by criminal gangs, they are unable to defend themselves when they're then failed by that same police department. So that, are you really surprised? And this is a question I wanted to pose to you. Are you really surprised when you see and you hear that there is a character named John Wick who's taking it upon himself to literally clean up the streets of the city? And what raised my hackles this week was two news pieces I saw. Number one was the latest hit he did on a criminal leader of the Boko Haram gang. And after that, the police come out and issue a statement saying, well, with this latest hit, by this alleged John Wick character, we the police are now going to put together a crack team of detectives in order to find this guy and bring him to justice. Now, I asked myself the question, as I'm sure most Mamelodi residents ask themselves the question too, how is it possible that you'll put together a crack team of detectives to find John Wick, but you have failed to do that in reining in the criminal gangs of Boko Haram and the Bafarasai? How is that possible? How does that not lend itself to the ongoing perception that the South African government, the ANC government, seemingly is quite happy to defend criminals? Not to say that John Wick isn't a criminal. I mean, he's a murderer. Let's be brutal. Let's be frank. He might be murdering people who we believe are, violent criminals, but it's still murder what he's doing. But the point I'm getting at is, how is it possible that the morality is selective? The priorities are selective by the police. Where people are being terrorized by criminals, not a peep by SAPS. But the moment someone from the community, presumably, rises up and starts hitting these criminal gangsters, literally putting bullet holes between their eyes, then suddenly SAPS comes up and says, yeah, we're going to put together a crack team of detectives from the provincial blah, 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 and the special command blah, 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 in order to go after this guy. How does that not leave a bitter taste in the mouth of residents who are literally saying, where the hell are the SAPs? Why is it that policing resources are efficient when it comes to demanding masks or policing people at the beach? But when it actually comes to tackling real crime in this country, dololo police in this country, instead you have a minister of commiseration, the asshat, literally visiting families where people have been killed. That seems to be the best thing he's able to do. Because he sure as hell isn't policing. I'd really be interested in hearing your views on this. Because there are some people who live in a bubble. And I was having this conversation today with friends. We went out for coffee this morning here in Cape Town. And I was saying, there's some people who live in a bubble. The reality for many of us, if not most of us, I know I must be home by at least 7 p.m. At least 7 p.m. Don't be on the streets anytime after that, because you'll subject yourself to some of the more hardened and opportunistic criminal types. That's the reality for me. The reality for me is now, when I'm doing community work in our informal settlements, in some of the more dangerous neighborhoods, I have to hire. And thank you, by the way, to those of you who contribute financially to the show, because you allow me to do this. But I have to hire 2 security officials to come with us, to accompany us as we weave through informal settlements, in order for me to meet guys who I work with, who I share my ideas with, etc., etc. That's the reality of South Africans in this country. But no, don't take it from me, because I'm the crazy right-winger, right? According to the left in this country, the trendy lefties, who live in this wonderful nirvana, this peaceful utopia that is South Africa. I'd love to live where they live. I'd love to live where they live. Because for the rest of us, it's hell. There are people now, I can tell you now, especially if you're Capetonian, that people call the N2, especially in the evenings, the hell run, the hell gauntlet. I know of people who don bulletproof vests and carry their pistol, as you should anyway. You should always carry your pistol on you. But the point I'm making is, for that particular hell run, they will don a bulletproof vest in the evenings. Because they know, if you have a breakdown or if you hit some sort of rock and your tire punctures and you have to pull to the side, they know what that means. They know they're about to be jumped, by criminals to rob them, to kill them on the side of the road. That's reality. And for those of us who don't travel in 3 or 10 car black Mercedes-Benz convoys filled with bodyguards and the like, that's the reality for us. A reality where living in South Africa is an absolute hell. Because those who hold the power are not the law-abiding citizens, it's the criminals and the criminal elites who happen to be political elites. Those are facts, no matter how you cut it. But let me not waffle, because I can see something going blah, blah, blah. I get it, people. Let me bring on Nolu Maki. Nolu, you just need to be on camera. Carol, I see you also in the waiting list. Please be on camera. Nolu, there she is. Let me just unmute her. Nolu, you just have to unmute yourself.
Yes, please.
Welcome to Liberty and Friends.
Hi.
Good evening.
Hi, sister.
What's on your mind?
Well, I just want to testify about what you're talking about as somebody who grew up in Ekasi. I'm from P, but of course I'm in Paarl now. I know exactly how is it like to stay in the community and be scared at the same time. And I know people, whenever they steal your stuff, you can go and ask someone, a group of people that can get your stuff back. And as much as that is not a right thing to do, but I think I've grown to understand why even we have such things. Of course, I'd say it's a failure of the police, no doubt about that. But at the same time, I think as young people, when we move to your middle class phase, it's easy for us to forget, especially in this country, to forget the realities of being in these areas where you find that it's horrific, it's traumatic that you walk and you're worrying about your life. You're worrying about the fact that even as a woman, not even just as a woman for that matter, but just as individuals, you worry the fact that, day I get at home at this time, I know exactly I need to look left, right, and center. If I have a brother or a nephew, I need to tell them, please wait for me at the stop. I need to, because I can't walk alone here. And that feeling, and I even experienced that even here, because I remember I used to work for an office in Khayelitsha. It was horrendous to work there, and because you knew that there are people that will really, as they'll call it, was a bomb in daylight. They will really daylight, That feeling on its own, it's tiring. And when you go to for instance, the spaces that I've stayed in, even where I stay right now, and you see how order really brings peace of mind even in our spirits, because now you're not living cautionary, thinking who's following me, who's behind me. I'm not saying it's the best, but I'm just saying that feeling when it's just less than, when it just decreases, it makes life much more easier. You can think as a person, at least you can feel much better and at ease about it. So that's one part. I just want to concur on what you're talking about. But mostly, I'm very disappointed, Nancy, with how we have become, especially as Black people. Sorry to bring it to you like that. See, the best way, when it comes to even these elections, sure, I'm not shocked, but just you've seen the light and you understand the whole dynamic of left and right wingers, as they call them. Man, the way that they are playing us, especially as Black, the way they are keeping us gripped in their hands, especially the middle class and the elites. I don't want to name names, but you know them, the ones who put it, the ones who cry and say that they were being, overlooked, or whatever the word that was used in that Nando's saga, whatever mission. But you look at them and you realize that it makes sense why my dad will tell me in my face and say that, I don't know what you guys are crying about, because you're having it easier than we do. So now for us to really use that card all the time, I think it's the best, as a marketing person, it's the best recipe to sell to our Black people, because it keeps the elites in power. It keeps those for their books to be bought. It keeps a lot of them, to just continue to gain and be at the top of the echelon, while others are at the lowest. It's just a pity your channel is being watched by people that like myself. But ordinary South Africans, they're being fed by this lie and they just take it. Ask the first thing to people,
Look, I want to concur with something with what you said. And I just want to just dispel something also in the same time. It's not that I'm averse to speaking and pointing out things, especially if they are if they affect one particular racial grouping or the other. I'm quite okay with speaking about that. For example, I would agree with you. There is a devastating lack of accountability in the Black community in this country, a devastating lack of accountability. We simply are not taking responsibility in most cases of the political choices we're making, to the point where it frustrates the rest of us as South Africans, black, white, Indian, and colored, where, for instance, and let me be precise, you can have a situation where, as will be the case, for example, in my township, albeit, thank God, it's changing, where there are fellow black South Africans who come out and not ask hard questions of the politicians who they continuously and perpetually vote for. For instance, I made this point, I think, 2 Libertarian friends ago, where I said, you know, the only time we saw the potholes being fixed or the grass being cut in my area of Imlazi was because they knew, the ANC knew their leader, Ulo, what's his face, Uramaphosa, was coming to stations, the Umlazi station, train station, in order to canvass votes. And you literally saw a case where the potholes were fixed. And by the way, the potholes were fixed only on the road that was going to drive the president in and out. So everything else is still the same. So the grass is still not cut, there's still trash, piles of trash uncollected everywhere else. But on that road in particular, it was pristine. And I asked myself the question, and thankfully there were residents who also asked, because I walked around and I asked questions. I said, you know, at what stage do I look at this, and do you look at this, dear fellow neighbor? Because you're black and I'm black, right? So this isn't a race thing, but surely it does become an accountability issue, because it is primarily, if not only, black South Africans now who are still preserving and voting in effectively inferior political parties like Abo ANC, EFF, and DA, you're coming also in my definition of inferior. But anyway, that's another chat for another day. But the real takeaway here is there is a desperate need for black South Africans to have that conversation, because I don't think we are at a point yet where we are necessarily politically sophisticated enough to actually admit certain things to ourselves and say, you know what, we're actually holding ourselves back. The boogeyman white guy that is sold to us, the white supremacy that is sold to us, the white monopoly capital, if I can give it our local flavor, that is sold to us is perhaps the least of our problems. And that actually what is our problems is our inability to pick amongst ourselves from our community the best amongst us to govern and to provide leadership for the rest of us. I'm gonna repeat that. The biggest issue we're facing as black South Africans is our inability to pick the best amongst us, because there are amongst us people who are truly exceptional, people who should be in positions of leadership, but will never be seen or never have an opportunity to be in a position like that because Tina, as a community, we are literally.
I don't know if it's just me, but Sihle, I've lost you right there. Please come back. But okay, yeah, I think another point I wanted to raise, of course, was the point of the corporate media. That
Oopsie daisy.
Sorry.
You lost me there for a moment, but it's funny how that cut out when I was making that point about black folk. Someone was like, what? He's talking about black folk. Cut him off, cut him off.
But see, I want to interject there, right? I remember just recently this week, Atin Tongana from News Africa asking, I'm so sick of the question that they're asking these leaders, especially white, John Steenhuisen, asking him about a smirk that he gave from that interview. Yeah. And I was boiling inside. And I remember even Gayton McKenzie, who the guy who's I think he's running for PA. And I said to him, like, can you stop? Because he was saying, don't vote for racist. And he listed all those parties that, of course, white-led. And I'm saying, can you stop lying to us? We want to hear the basic services that you're going to do for our people, you know? And for me, I think that's where the media is failing us, to ask the right questions. How long are we going to really squeeze out a story about the so-called racists and forget to ask? Because I want to know, John, are you really going to take care of the issue down the road, John, that you haven't been doing? I want to understand that. I want to know that. Are you gonna better really bring more local small businesses? Are you gonna fight for lockdowns to end because we don't need them, because we don't have jobs because of this nonsense? Not that it's a nonsense, but you know what I mean. You know, all of those things that are important, we don't hear those questions. And this is a second journalist that I've seen asking John irrelevant things that they're supposed to be asking, such as, how are you going to make sure that this municipality, that ward is taken care, this case? But no, the only thing that is in the mind of our media and the journalists is the fact that, why are you racist? I'm thinking, really, you know how painful it is to not to know what you're going to eat at night, and someone is asking someone who's a leader, what do you think about racism? I just find it to be the most I find it to quite be a luxury thing to worry about. I'm not going to lie.
And you'd be absolutely spot on. And you'll notice, by the way, that the media was also very quick to retreat a little bit, because they were starting to be called out, even by people who historically don't ordinarily call the media out for this nonsense. I think there was a recognition that, hang on. Why is it that whenever we come close to voting time, there is suddenly a flood of racism stories in the corporate media? And why is there a flood and almost an attempt to dribble and distract those very same Black South Africans who I argued lack the accountability already, to question certain things? And this is why I'm saying there is an awakening. And you'll remember I even mentioned that even in my home township of Imlazi, when we started seeing the repair work and the grass being cut, even ardent ANC people were like, hang on. There's something dodgy about suddenly seeing service delivery when this chap is coming through. I think this is a conversation that is necessary to have. And it's one of the reasons why I used to have a show called Blacks Only here. It was me being purposefully facetious in saying that actually it's necessary to an extent, because there are some things that actually do require fellow Black South Africans to have a frank conversation on, because far too, put it this way, and this will be my last thought, we've allowed the corporate media, we've allowed the commentariat, the sort of woke commentariat, the ones who I almost describe as being the brittle spirit blabbity blacks, and of course the social justice warrior whites. We've allowed them to sort of define in the corporate media who we are as South Africans, more so as Black South Africans. And that conversation, unfortunately, is a conversation of those who live in the bubble, of not the rest of us who live in real South Africa, who you rightly point out would want to have the real politic, the real issues spoken about, but are far too distracted by the corporate media who talk about race and how John Steenhuisen was smirking, and the smirking was a symptom of, his desire to watch this Black woman, blah, 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 be oppressed by Gareth Cliff, blah, 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 blah. All of that is nonsense. In fact, even as I say that, just hold that thought, Nolu. I want to bring on Carol, because she has been waiting in the lobby here. Carol, you just need to be on camera, please. I cannot see you. Carol, if you can hear me, please cam up and make sure you have a light in front of you, please. I want to bring you on the show too. And a reminder, please, to the viewers, you're watching Liberty and Friends. We're perhaps in the last, let's call it 20 minutes of the show. I am joined by you, the viewers of the show. Tonight was about you, the viewers of the show. Keep the comments running in. Okay, Carol just left the lobby. She might try and reconnect. I'm going to put the link to get on as a guest in the comment section once again. Please make sure, as I said, only 2 rules, that you're on camera, and that you have a light in front of you. I am in conversation with a viewer of the show, Unolu Magi, who of course is out in the battle at the moment. I'm really hoping to meet you, by the way, Nolu, because I am in Cape Town for the next week. But let me just put some comments on the screen. Guys, if you have any questions, by the way, please get them on screen. I really appreciate those too. I see Uluando Augustine Sawula. Let me put his comment on screen here. Government is moving away from trying to censor social media, and instead is turning to another tactic to influence public opinion, which is to put their own propaganda on the internet. Uluando, I can't say I disagree with you. You're right. You see a lot of that government propaganda on small things and on big things. For example, you'll see a lot of it pop up on your screen or on your phone when you're on the internet, for example, regarding the spicy cough, as just one example. There's plenty of things that we're seeing where we're seeing that sort of propaganda. And it's not just South Africa, by the way, which makes it even worse. Lars Solis, South Africans are pretty hurtful of identity politics. I would agree with that too. I think there is an awakening to identity politics being very toxic and being counterproductive insofar as ordinary South Africans discussing those real issues. For example, the Nolu pointed out the fact that, for example, right now as we speak, there is a family somewhere in this country, and not just one, many, millions of South Africans who are food insecure, families who are going to bed tonight having not had a meal. Yeah, let me keep that one there because I think there's a lot I could say around that. Let's see here. Moonchild, of course, shout out to you, one of the moderators on the show. Moonchild, now that I actually, now that I remember, please get in touch with me via email. Let me share my email address. It's BDL, Bravo Delta Lima, at BigDaddyLibertyShow.com. There is a package that we want to send you, Moonchild, courtesy of our friends from the Daily Friend. They wanted me to make sure that you know that. Andre, spitting a reality, a fact on the show. Shout out to you, Andre. And he's damn right. Race is not the problem in this country. It sure as hell isn't the problem in this country. And all you need to do is escape that mainstream media, or pardon me, that corporate media bubble, and talk to ordinary South Africans, and you'll quickly realize how true that statement is. Nolu, you're getting a bit of love here from Jose da Silva. You better hire Unolu. Well, there you go. Who knows, man? We might have that conversation with Unolu. Guys, let me get into some of the more comments here. Umaki Umalo, shout out to you, Maki, saying Unolu's absolutely spot on. Ati and other reporters are absolutely ridiculous. And that's the thing. People need to realize, and I hate to say this because, of course, I have friends in the corporate media. And, I'm not judging them. They're good people. They're good people individually. The problem is the system they work in is creating perverse incentives. And those incentives, unfortunately, don't err on the side of creating a news offering which is factual, which allows ordinary citizens the ability to make decisions, whether about the society they live in, and of course, the politics of the day. Nolu, I'm going to give you the final word as we look to wrap up.
Yeah, I think what's important is that I would love for you to also start having this conversation with us, as you mentioned. Also invite women. I think women need to learn the skill to debate with men and being confident in debating without really feeling like victims. And I want this is especially because honestly, what I've noticed, I like to do just a research and to see, honestly speaking, the white community, not to racialize things, white communities, they are fighting for real problems. That is why communities, we go and live there because they know how to fight. I'd love for us to get into that also as Black people, instead of me wanting to stay at the top, so that we can fight to have that mindset, and that's why I'm saying that I'm disappointed to young people such as that girl, even with the Caesars and the likes, who are really just busy pushing a narrative that doesn't uplift us as this next generation, So for me, even as we go to vote tomorrow, I just can't wait for us to vote free without fear, meaning whether it's Black or white, that kind of fear, but rather to vote really objectively, knowing what do we need. And just so that we may also understand, we don't really have to beg the government who liberated us. They are not serving us well, And all of those people who want to just hack up on our feelings and emotions, we don't need them anymore, especially
Absolutely.
Thank you so much, Sikhle. Keep up the great work, man, and I would love to meet you.
Absolutely. Please email me. You saw my email address is on there. We'll arrange that because I am here in Cape Town for the next week. That is Unolu Magi. Hey, man, who knows? Maybe you might see a lot more of her here on the BDL show. Shout out to Unolu out in the battle. There she is. Folks, maybe as we conclude, let me end where I began the show, which is to say, tomorrow is voting day. Tomorrow is voting day. I really wanted to hear from you guys. Who would you be casting your votes for? There are a lot of smaller parties, contenders, who are actually bringing up hard issues, the very hard issues that you haven't seen, for example, or heard being spoken of by the corporate media. And maybe it's time to give them an opportunity, right? The DA, for example, has been trying to scare people off from voting for quote-unquote smaller parties. But this country isn't a DA country, nor is this country an ANC country, nor are we even an EFF country. We're South Africans, damn it. And this right to vote, this right to be able to decide the direction of your political leadership is a hard-fought right. People died for this right. And it really is up to you to use it wisely and to understand, by the way, as I try and make myself a little bit more comfortable here, and to understand, by the way, that you are accountable for who you vote for. Whether you're black, Indian, white, colored, it's irrelevant. You are accountable for who you vote for. I mean, I was beginning that conversation earlier on around the lack of accountability, for example, that you'll see in poor and often black communities. And this is part of the work that I do when I travel around this country, talking to folks who live in those very communities, people who have the same skin color as me, is to say that actually you have the power. The choice is yours. And what you need to choose is, firstly, a basket of ideas that will advance this country, that will grow the economy, that will give you and your family, more importantly, the opportunity to grow, the opportunity to actually advance, right? So that's the first area. Then from there, either A, choose from the existing politicians those who reflect those ideas. And if they don't exist, then you stand, damn it. You stand as a local leader and to get the job done. That is the future of this country, if we are to have a future. If South Africa is to endure, and not only endure, but actually become a free, prosperous, non-racial, and property-owning society, then it's actually those individuals who believe in the liberty ideas that I talk about, who have to do the standing when it comes to putting their hand up and saying, vote for me. I will at least advance these ideas and defend our families, defend our faith, defend the flag that we call South Africa, whether it is one country or one which is a federal country, it's irrelevant, but defend the people who live in it. So as I'm seeing people sort of put in the comment section who they'll be voting for, I'm seeing interesting names come up here. You know, I'm seeing Abo Freedom Front Plus. I think they're going to do relatively well in this election. I'm seeing Abo, what do I see here? CIP, Diana D. I don't know what CIP is. Paulie's still saying DA. Louis Miles is saying ACDP or OHM. I have no idea what OHM is. I couldn't even guess. I see UIM again. DA from Reisibek. You know, I'm seeing a lot of these smaller parties actually begin to crop up. You know, on Wednesday on the BDL show, I brought you the Cape Independence Party with Jack Miller. And in fact, there it is over there. Jake, saying he's going to vote for the Cape Independence Party. Diana D saying she's going to vote for the she's not saying she's not saying EFF. She's saying EFF is now campaigning in some regions to form a three-way coalition between the ANC and themselves. That'll be interesting to see. Avron Mayer, shout out to you, Avron. I'm voting for the DA because they get stuff done. City of Cape Town service delivery record speaks for itself. I'm voting in Sub-Council 6 Ward 2. Willem Winkel speaks, but say, love to know how many of the millions of houses Cyril promised for Alex. Well, there you go, right? You know, bit of a different issue, but related to an extent, right? The idea of accountability. Hold these people accountability. Cyril once stood up on a stage, as Willem is rightly pointing out, and promised millions of homes. Jacob Zuma, if you remember when he was president, promised 9 million jobs at some stage. None of this materialized. But the people who keep voting in the ANC don't ask these questions. And those people are primarily black. And when you raise this, they'll call me all sorts of names. Oh, you're an Uncle Tom, you're anti-black, blah, blah, blah. You hate black people, or you love whites, blah, blah, blah. Then I ask them the question, okay, fine. Let's assume everything you're saying about me is true. Let's assume I'm anti-black. Let's assume I'm pro-white, whatever that means, blah, blah, blah. How is the ANC and the EFF, how are they pro-black? If your bar is that low for me to call me anti-black simply because I disagree with the ANC, then let's talk about that very ANC that fails black people over and over. Let's talk about that ANC that kills black people, whether it's AIDS denialism, whether it's literally a lockdown or poor policies such as BEE and affirmative action, which destroy an economy now where we see the manufacturing sector, for example, having the same number of people who work in manufacturing as we last saw in 1969. We've destroyed manufacturing in this country. The ANC has done that. ANC policy has done that. If I'm anti-black, what are they? And these are the sort of people I'm going to start calling out because they think I fear them. I don't. I don't fear you. I don't fear you. My being black isn't hinged on you affirming that I'm a black South African. I don't need you to tell me I'm black. Some of you are out here acting like you're the gatekeepers of black people. Deputy black. But I digress. The point I'm really driving at is it's those people who are allergic to accountability. When you then ask them the question, how are you holding the very black individuals you speak of to account? Because it is mostly black South Africans who are living the poor outcomes. And they're doing so at the hands of black politicians. Ain't no white person oppressing South Africans now. Ain't no white person oppressing South Africans. White people are moving on with their lives. They're doing what they need to do. And if anything, we've created a system, so perverse a system, where black individuals in political power are able to destroy the lives of black South Africans and get away with it scot-free. Because those same politicians dribble and distract you with their friends in the corporate media. Oh, look at this white person. This white person smirked at you. Very scary. Guys, you're being dribbled and distracted here. You're being dribbled and distracted. And it's time we have that conversation very honestly. We'll definitely do that here on the BDL show. Guys, I'm going to wrap it up because my time is up. Hope you enjoyed the show, by the way. Guys, I really encourage you in future episodes to call in. Come on, when I do have these open to the viewers type shows. And before you hop off, please just hit that like button. It really does help. I promise you it helps. It gets this, it does something to the algorithm, if that's the expression. Let me just put 2 or 3 more comments on the screen insofar as what are you going to vote for, dear South African? Tell us who you're going to vote for. Let's see here. Vernon Niger. Shout out to Vernon. What's he saying here? I think he's, okay, he's responding to someone. DA coalitions are being talked about in the corporate media, and I wonder if it's true the press are pushing an agenda. I'm not sure what that agenda is. Just 2 more comments, guys. Jake, once again, I'm sure the DA is not stupid enough to stand with the EFF and the ANC and the UDM, as the UDM really being itching and moaning about the. I think you meant, okay. Shout out to you, Jake. I saw what you did there. About the DA and pushing BS lies about them. One more comment, guys. Young Durbanite. Shout out to you guys. I don't know who you are, or if this is a channel or the like, but shout out to you guys. Are very active on the channel. I really appreciate that. Ward 66, the largest suburb in Durban, with a beach, now has an informal settlement in the middle of it. Where's that? Where's Ward 66, folks? Ward 66 is an everlasting DA stronghold. Where's Ward 66? I'll be very interested in finding out about that. Guys, as I end the show there, Johan Nell, I'm assuming is voting Action SA. I'm just seeing, there we go, Action SA. I shouldn't have assumed, it's right there. I think you said it. Action SA, we had a chat about them last week. It was very unpopular, of course, by Action SA people because it wasn't a balanced conversation. And I'm like, guys, I've invited Herman Mashaba on to the show before. Herman Mashaba, by the way, I think is a little afraid of me because of what I may have said about him in the past. The invite is open. I'm not going to be hostile to him, but I'm going to ask him honest questions, though. So that invite is still open. So if you're Action SA people, message your leader. Tell them there's an open invite here on the BDL show. There you go. Pia Botha also saying she'll be voting, casting her vote for Action SA. Folks, on that note, let me say good night and thank you very much for watching the show. As always, I super appreciate those of you who contribute financially to the show. Trust me, it really goes a long way, guys. You're not only getting diesel in the bucket, but also helping me hire people who are able to put together the show in a much more professional way for me. And long may that grow. Guys, let me let you in on a secret if you're still here. There is some big conversations happening in the background. This show is going to become very, very interesting. I've been saying this for quite a while, but people are now committing, and that's a very, very healthy sign. So please pray for me. I don't care who you pray to, but pray to me, please. Pray to me, listen to me, trying to act like Hashem. Please pray for me and pray for this channel. You know me, I'm very big on faith. As please God, the show is going to become quite a big, big thing. So guys, thank you very much to those who already support, the early adopters who contribute as little as $50 a month. You guys are rock stars. I appreciate you. If you do want to support the show financially, all of those details are in the descriptor of the video. I'm in Cape Town for the next week. There's quite a few things I need to finish shooting, including that tourism special. So that's going to be concluded this week. Guys, with that being said, thank you so much for watching. And a reminder to you, as I always say at the end of every show, never trust a commie.